A Critique of Anarchist Communism by Ken Knudsen. Woo! Hey, you know, I am intrigued to read this. Just one of many other books I have to actually record a review for at some point. Very short little book. You know what's the most amazing thing so far that I've read from this, though? Not its actual critique, even though apparently it's pretty good. But the fact that on the back it says Wendy McElroy is an egoist feminist. I mean, I can dig Wendy McElroy fine, but since when was she an egoist? I didn't know she was one of those. Shit. That would have been great. Especially, I mean, she works so close to Carl Wagner and everything. Well, anyway, we'll talk about that book at some point in the future. It is your Wednesday patron only, Zomia ONE Underground only, go by the tag that you like, Wednesday Q&A. And we've got a couple of very interesting questions to get into. Not well, I mean, there's science, certainly. Yeah, a lot of science, not so much tech this week. But boy, have the tech stories been hot. I want to give you a triple load this week. Take that however you want. And give you another episode, but there's so much to talk about. There's been so much crap. And anyway, and we really have to talk about Simjacker, even though there's really nothing you can do about it other than, throw your phone into a lake of fire, which wouldn't be a bad idea in the first place. Something I won't be throwing into a lake of fire, though, let me tell you. Finally got. It's been years in the making. You know what I mean? Actually, this has been years in the making, what I'm holding in my hand. But it's been years in the making. I know a lot of people have been waiting, a lot of Sovereign Tech listeners, and Zomia ONE listeners, but I finally got a Switch. I got a Nintendo Switch. And actually, specifically, the Nintendo Switch Lite. In fact, it's the gray one. You might have seen a picture of me holding it on Twitter, if you follow me there. I am going to do a review, as I said I would, on the Gaming Grid, which I'll be recording and releasing this week, of this entire system, along with some of the games that I have acquired so far. Boy, I can tell you on the onset, I love this thing. I mean, I really love this thing. And the games I have right now there's actually a game called Love. That's a classic. It's like a quasi Atari game. I played it. All right, here's a quick funny thing. I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about this or about the Switch Lite. Again, we'll talk about that on the Gaming Grid. But the funny thing is that so this game Love that I mentioned, I bought this, I think I bought that game like 7 years ago, before there was a Nintendo Switch. And it was such a simple game. You can buy it for like $1, and I bought it on here, I think, for like 10 cents even, because it was on sale. And wow, are there a lot of sales in that Nintendo eShop. I found myself generally, like, the games that I wanted to purchase on this, I haven't purchased many. I think I might have 4 here, and I paid a song for most of them. The games I wanted to purchase are just ones that really are in my Steam library or in my GOG library already, just because you have to break out a laptop to rock them and play them and everything. A lot of them I've never gotten to, but now that I have a Switch and, I have the system that I can just kind of play anywhere, now I want to have them on the Switch and play them. Fortunately, a lot of these games are quote unquote classics or have been around for a few years. And so again, you can get them for practically nothing. In fact, another game I got was Anakin, which I love that game. I have played it, never beat it. But I actually got that for free because if you use gold coins, act as like a penny or 10 cents or something like that. Like I spent 600 gold coins and I got Anakin for free. And I have a ton of these gold coins, just from all the shit that I got for my 3DS. But I got Anakin, I got Love, I got Anakin, which Anakin's an awesome game. Have Tetris 99, of course. I actually have the physical edition of that. Got Night Trap. Had to buy. I already told everybody that when I get my Switch Lite, that's the first game I'm getting. And it was. Because of that bullshit in the 90s where Nintendo basically said Night Trap will never be on a Nintendo system. Well, looky there. Here it is on a Nintendo system. I got the Super Kirby Clash, which is kind of stupid. I mean, it's fun, but it's a free game, so whatever. Double Dragon 4, which I actually tweeted about that. Man, this game is so great. Oh, fuck. And especially on a Switch, does it play awesome. I decided, I was like, you know what, let's read some reviews about Double Dragon 4. Like, in fact, I think I was looking up to see what it would cost for the Switch, and it's cheap for the Switch. And I think I saw a review that said, don't play Double Dragon 4, just play Double Dragon Neon. Now, Double Dragon Neon has not come out for the Switch yet. I know it's going to be, or apparently it's been suggested that it will come out for the Switch. I have Double Dragon Neon on Steam. I've played it. But now I went and read the reviews for Double Dragon 4 just to see. Understand, when Double Dragon 4 came out, I named it Game of the Year because it is that good. Now, I read other people's reviews, and the reviews basically said, oh, well, it plays like a game from the 90s. Well, no fucking shit. That's the point. Oh, man. You people, and I don't mean you listening to me, I mean the people that do these kinds of asshat reviews, you're the reason we have horseshit like Super Mario Kart Tour, and you know what I'm talking about. That just came out today. Boy, I'm going to be doing a review of that on Gaming Grid as well. What a flying turd. Understand, Nintendo didn't really develop that. It was another company. But, ooh, fuck. Especially on a week when we're celebrating 130 years of Nintendo, the company, being in existence. Unbelievable. Anyway, Double Dragon 4 is so fucking awesome. And it's awesome because of its limitations, because of the fact that it does play more or less with a couple extra buttons. It does still play like a game from the 90s. The other thing people complained about is that, it's more like an NES game than it is like an arcade game. Great. Most people I know love Double Dragon playing 1 through 3. 3 was a pain in the ass, but playing 1 through 3 or whatever, or playing Double Dragon and Battletoads or Super Double Dragon, playing those at home. Most people I talk to that love Double Dragon, like myself, we grew up with the NES versions, or the NES versions. So I don't know what the fuck these muprons are complaining about. Anyway, I do have Switch Online on this as well, so that means that I have access to all of those NES games that are available there, including Double Dragon 1 through 3, as well as the Super Nintendo selection that just started rolling out. And, I mean, there's a lot to say on all of that. Again, that'll come up on the Gaming Grid. And, of course, the most important game next to Night Trap that I knew I had to get. And I pre-ordered this, and that is the remake of Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. That had to happen. And I do this, of course, for our dearly departed number one Sovereign Tech fan of all time, Chris Pasquini, who that was his favorite game, his favorite Zelda game. And I know he was so excited to play it on the Switch, and so I'm playing it for him. And boy, and it's a fucking, talk about an awesome game. Awesome game. Yeah, I really, really dig the system. There's a lot to say about it, especially with the Switch Lite. In fact, I've got it in some armor right now. It's a Hori, Hori. They're a popular accessories company. They released a ton of accessories for the Nintendo Switch Lite, but I got to tell you, here's something that's stupid, right? So they released this armor, which pretty much doubles the size of the Switch Lite, but it does protect it. It's surrounded by TPU plastic. Just imagine like a higher end case for a smartphone, just you're putting it on a Switch. That's basically what they did. And since the Switch Lite is all one piece, that's easy to do because you don't have to worry about removing anything. It really helps with gripping the system better. So I do like it. But one thing that's ridiculous is Hori also, same company, also released a stand specifically for the Switch Lite that has a USB-C port at the bottom because the Switch charges through that, which allows you to add out, and it has 2 USB ports on it. So you can put it in this little, it's not a dock, but it's kind of a mini dock. You can put it in that, then that dock has USB ports on it, and it also has a power port, USB AC adapter power port there. So basically you could hook up 2 controllers to your Nintendo Switch with this little Switch Lite dock. Here's the funny thing. When you have, and this again, same company, when you try to connect the Switch Lite to the Hori dock while it's wearing the Hori armor, I know it's kind of funny to say, but when you do that with the Hori armor on, you can't plug it into the dock. Like the armor keeps it from sitting right on the dock. It's the same goddamn company. What, they didn't expect people to like buy the armor? And what I mean, and I don't know. You'd have to cut like right into this armor to make it work somehow. It's not going to work. especially since they put like this really hard plastic at one point on the back, which looks really nice, but you can't just like, if it was just TPU all around it, you could cut it to where maybe you could let the dock sit on it, but it would still get in the way of the USB, not the ports. Well, I'll say the ports. It'd get in the way of the USB ports. But yeah, I just thought that was absolutely ridiculous and stupid of them to do. But whatever. So anyway, I have been enjoying my Switch Lite, gotten in some time with it, and it's been, I mean, just a fuck ton of fun. Played a lot of Dr. Mario on it as well, admittedly. I love that game. So anyway, full review of that coming up on the gaming grid. Why don't we go ahead and get into a couple of our questions? We got a couple of big ones that I think are going to ignite, well, it might create a bit of a conversation out of me. We'll see. But also got a dynamite album of the week, and I mean that, like one that I absolutely cannot believe is real, and that it's happening, and that it's just one more piece to 2019, that while 2019 in many ways has been a shitty year, of course, we, in the last episode of Sovereign Tech that you heard, we dedicated to Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I mean, the deaths have been ridiculous, to say nothing of others previously mentioned just in this episode that, I'm still reeling from. Despite that, 2019 has been a remarkable musical year, or a remarkable year for music. I mean, maybe the best year for music I've ever fucking heard. Like I said, the only thing that could put it over the top would be for Kiss to come out with an album, but, I don't expect that. I don't think that's going to happen. If it did, it'd be completely out of fucking nowhere. But there's so much great shit coming out this year. It's insane. And from people you just wouldn't believe, that you thought they were long done, and they come out with stuff. It's really, really been a banner year for music. Now, just quick again, actually, not again, because I didn't say it in the first place. Before I do get into this, before we get into the couple questions that we have, I do want to say that if you want to become, because you can become friends, I already have one, but you can become friends with a Nintendo account and with Switches, and we can actually play against each other. If you want to friend me, on my Twitter profile, you will see my Switch friend code. And so you can add me right in with that. And, I think it'd be a ton of fun to play with some Sovereign Tech listeners. I don't know, rock some Dr. Mario or figure out something. I think that'd be a tremendous time. Anyway, okay. So all that said, let's get into our questions. And again, we've got some good ones. Here we go. So, in fact, this one I did not see coming, but, I've seen about it. The person asked me if I've seen about it. You couldn't avoid hearing about this person, it seems. I really have to have that Twitter conversation soon, or the conversation about Twitter and the trending box and all that, because this kind of points at that, but I'm not going to do that here. I'll stick to what the question asker is all about. And here we go. Hey, Stallion, I hear a lot on your show, even recently, that you're on board with a lot of quote unquote, this is in quotes, climate science. Not really sure. Maybe that's a term. I don't know. And environmentalism. Okay. I'm not into environmentalism. Let me break this down before we go further. Okay. Now, this is a great question, or this is, it's a thought out question. It's not like super long, but it's lengthy. I appreciate it. So I'm not, mad at you for using these terms. I just want to have clarity here. Environmentalism, as I have said over and over again, over the years on Sovereign Tech, is a religion. Yes, it is. And it has all the hallmarks, and I think there's a lot of people who attribute it and really do consider it very much like a full-on religious experience. I know what environmentalism is and means, but I do not identify with that term at all. And it's not, to be clear, it's not that I'm afraid to be called something, or get worried that I get pigeonholed or put into some basket, that makes me one of them or something. It's not that at all. It's just environmentalism comes with a lot of really shitty ass baggage. And I genuinely think, like, I mean, well, I'm not one for movements. Okay. And, you know, the environmentalist movement and all that. I mean, I'm for individual action. I am not one for like big movements and all this crap that, you know, groupthink and there's another term coming up that I will reiterate this point with. I mean, groupthink in general, no thanks. I want no part of it. Now, ecology, and I make this clear every time I talk about, you know, if we talk about climate change or if we talk about some kind of environmental situation, whatever, I make it very clear every time that I bring something like that up that I'm not an environmentalist. However, I, you know, am very much into ecology, and I have concerns, you know, when it comes to ecology, because, I mean, that, you know, that's an actual science. Okay. Ecology is an actual science. Environmentalism, as I say, is a religion. So I have ecological concerns that some might think line up with environmentalism. But, well, anyway, I'm sure as we go through this question, you know, we'll cover that more. But do not, I mean, I'm not afraid of this, but really don't lump me in with those people because I'm not them. So anyway, and again, I'm not even really sure what climate science means, but okay. So again, let me start again. Hey, Stallion, I hear a lot on your show, even recently, that you're on board with a lot of climate science and environmentalism, which doesn't sit well with being a libertarian, I imagine. Okay, we got to stop again. That's what I told you. Another word was coming up. I'm not a libertarian. I'm not. And it's not like I'm being fucking hipster in saying that I'm not a libertarian. Oh, I'm not one of them. It's nothing like that. Libertarians have told me I'm not a libertarian. Okay? Like, that's coming from them. I don't have to say it. They say it. So, fine. Okay? I don't get, I mean, I have gotten invited, like I did get invited to Porkfest this year. I haven't been invited to speak or really be a part of any libertarian event in a while. So, you know, like, and there's apparently a lot of them happening. I mean, apparently, I don't know how many of them actually get off the ground. But yeah, I am not considered that. No one who writes libertarian books would chalk me up as a libertarian. They don't even let me into the conversation. Not that I need to be, not that I want to be. So yeah, but sure. Do libertarians in general and libertarianism and environmentalism or even ecological concerns, do they often line up much? It appears not. But let's keep reading the question here. So, and I don't know, question asker, I'm not sure what I mean, because your email's pretty anonymous, so I don't know who you are or quote unquote what you like to identify with. But anyway, let's keep reading. Recently, this is the question. Recently, there has been a lot of talk about a girl, Greta Thunberg. Not sure if you've heard anything about it, but if you happen to look into it, I'm curious on your thoughts. Okay. If you're online at all in the past few days, there's no way you don't know about Greta Thunberg. This gal, she's from Sweden, 16 years old. She is a climate activist. I guess that's a word, too, that I hadn't heard before, but okay. And she has spoken in front of, I don't know, all different political bodies, the UN. I guess she did some kind of, I don't know, she sat in front of the UN or something, in front of the UN building or some kind of building. Maybe it's in Sweden somewhere, and, was just like holding a sign demanding that people, that politicians do something about climate change. Okay. And she's I think she's autistic. People are talking about that now. Everybody's talking about her online. I mean, it's just a thing. And there are a lot of people insulting her. In fact, I mean, just what I did read up about her, and I did listen to her, kind of the big speech she had recently where she does the whole "how dare you" thing. There were politicians tweeting saying, because I guess she was coming across the Atlantic on a zero emissions sailboat. And a politician said, well, terrible things can happen at sea in August. And I mean, that's effectively a death threat. I mean, she's a climate activist. Maybe environmentalists are even dropping the term because they know about all the negative baggage and what often feels like a real lack of science that comes along with that term. So maybe that's why they're going with climate activist. I don't know. But to me, and I'm not insulting this gal. I'm just saying to me that if these new terms, I don't think this ever took off, but this was a thing a few years ago where you had Christians, and that's what they were. They were Christians. But you had Christians and they were doing like these online video campaigns and everything where they said, I'm not a Christian, I'm a follower of Christ, or a Christ follower. And that's what they wanted to be called. Reason being, they didn't want to identify with the term Christian. And I can kind of understand that because, boy, if there's a term that has not the best historical record, regardless of whether or not there have been good people, bad people, whatever, within that movement and religion, regardless of any of that, where you sit on that, you got to agree that, I mean, and pick your denomination. They've all done some pretty ugly shit over the past few centuries at some point. So I could kind of understand why you'd want to stay away from that, right? Why you'd want to stay away from the term Christian. But look, there are some things that have been so deeply ingrained. If you proclaim Christ, you're going to get called a Christian. And to argue about that, I think sometimes what people think is that if you go with a different term, it's like a conversation starter. I want to disabuse you of that notion that somehow, what is, if I, which I wouldn't because I'm an atheist, but if I went up to somebody and said, oh no, I did believe in Christ. If I walked up to them and I said, and somebody called me, oh, are you Christian? I said, no, I'm a follower of Christ. Okay, if I did that to somebody, do you know how I think the other person would react? They would not. I would be expected, like, I guess the hope is that, what does that mean? I'm like, I'd be waiting for them to wonder, like, what is this follower of Christ? Why don't you like the word Christian? Maybe they'd ask that question quick, but I don't think they'd actually give a shit about why. If you came up to me and did that sort of thing, I would just be annoyed. I mean, I'll call people whatever the fuck they want to be called, but I would just be annoyed. I'd be like, oh, stop. You're a Christian. Okay? I mean, if you want to rock out some kind of denomination or something, fine. But this was literally, most denominations of Christianity still call themselves Christians, unless you're Messianic Jews. And I mean, that's a whole other fucking can of worms. Regardless, I mean, even Mormons will call themselves Christians, for fuck's sake. Yeah, there's just some things when you switch it around. In fact, switching of terms probably will be part of my response to this. But there's some things that you just switch around and you're like, all right, you're just being asinine and annoying, and that's really it. So anyway, let me keep reading the rest of this question here because there's a little bit more. I see a lot of people like Tom Woods and even President Trump insulting her, and I don't really find her arguments or any environmentalist argument compelling. But I must admit, I enjoy seeing a 16-year-old yelling at politicians and saying, how dare you? I'm just amazed more people aren't appreciating her, at least for that. Keep up the incredible work, Stallion. Okay. Let's talk about this. Even that, it's kind of what we were just talking about changing terms. So, yeah, I have ecological concerns. I think a lot of what comes out of what I guess maybe is climate science or something, there's real validity to it. Okay, and there's shit going on, and there are genuine problems. Are we polluting the fuck out of shit? Yes, that's happening. Do we want to create, and this is my number one argument for it, do we want to create hyper-efficient technologies? Yes. Why? Because these efficient technologies that are, maybe green, I mean, fuck the Green New Deal. I've already talked about that, how that's bullshit, okay? But like the idea of, really efficient engineering, low power engineering and all of this. You know where that's going to be needed? You know where that's going to be really helpful? Space, outer space, or even if we get saucy enough, undersea, oceanic colonies, like underwater colonies. And I am so on board with those, both of those, being in space, underwater colonies, being a part of the future. These quote unquote green technologies and, recycling methods and all this other stuff will be absolutely essential to the survival of anyone who lives those lifestyles, either being in outer space or, being in in an underwater colony. So at the very least for that, just out of my own, intrinsic, my own, self-interest, I am on board with these things getting developed. Now, do I want laws passed about all this horseshit? No, of course not. And even if I did want them passed, if I was intellectually honest, and this is actually what Greta Thunberg brings up in her speeches, if I was intellectually honest, none of the laws that have been passed about this stuff, they're either ignored, bought out, like a company will buy itself out of it with carbon credits or some kind of horseshit like this, or you have entire countries that won't even, pay attention to the Paris Accords or the Kyoto Protocols or whatever. They don't care. So like the lack of teeth that laws genuinely have, and they do, they really do. Why would I argue for laws? Clearly they don't do anything. Okay. And again, that's part of this Greta Thunberg, this young gal. That's kind of part of her point, is that like, all you people are doing is talking. You're not taking any real action. You're not doing this. Now I want to comment about that in a second, but I do want to say, like, so the reason I stick with the term ecology is because it's the original fucking term for environmental, science that has to do with the environment. I'm not making a new word. I'm not even going backwards. It's the fucking word for it. Okay? This isn't Christians and Christ followers. No. This is the fucking word for it. Ecology. Now, a word that has changed, or a term that has shifted, climate change. Now, why does this term climate change even exist right now? Well, obviously, because it's so funny. You can go back to the 70s. In the 70s, you had a lot of scientists who were saying that we're heading for an ice age. You come to the 90s, when I was growing up, and you have everybody using, what's the phrase? You know what it is. Global warming. So the ice age didn't happen. Global warming, when you had, over the past few years, some of the coldest winters on record, it's a hard bargain to be, or it's a hard sell, I should say, not bargain. It's a hard sell to say that global warming is happening. And so what happens is that governments, scientists come up with this term climate change because they're tired of predicting, because they can't really predict. Okay, not very well what exactly the Earth is, what the Earth is doing. Now, some people want to go so far, and libertarians, a lot of libertarians, not all, I think want to fit into this camp, want to go so far as to say that, well, that's just proof that, it's not humans doing this, that this is just part of the cyclical nature of, Earth's environment, the weather on Earth, and so on and so forth. That it's not really, because I guess that becomes the debate, right? Is climate change man-made? Or is climate change something that's just naturally occurring? I sit, I suppose, somewhere in the middle on that. Okay, like I get it. The temperature is being recorded. A lot of this stuff is actually happening. Could the ice caps melt and blah, blah, blah? Sure. Are we polluting the shit out of everything? Yes. Are we turning stuff into parking lots that should be home for birds? You better goddamn believe those things should be home for birds, and fuck people for turning them into malls and parking lots. Because again, where I come from is more of the spaceship Earth hypothesis. In fact, concept. In fact, well, it is a hypothesis, actually. Depends. Spaceship Earth can mean a lot of things. In fact, it's ironic that I say that. Maybe I was kind of led by the next question, which is an interesting question. We'll get into that. But we live in an ecosystem, the entire planet Earth. And as you lose things within that planet, do species naturally go extinct? Of course they do. Okay, but, as you lose diversity, specifically in this case, in an ecological sense, as you lose biodiversity, you lose redundancy of the entire ecosystem that you live in. Yes, the individual is, the individual with consciousness, the sapient individual is the most important thing in the universe. Every single individual is just as important as the other individual. It's a paradoxical relationship, but this is the nature of egoism. I've said this many times, okay? However, for the individual to thrive, unless he has the very technologies that come out of what could be called environmentalism or climate science or whatever, or unless he promotes biodiversity on Earth, he will not have the most conducive environment within which to live. On Earth, it needs to be biodiverse for the best chance of you to survive. For humanity to survive, okay, if you care about humanity in some kind of broader sense, right? Because there are people perhaps that you love in your life and your children or whatever, and you want them to, you want them to have a future as well, which I know that's what Greta Thunberg was talking about, blah, blah, blah. We need to become a 2-planet species. Where another area where my philosophy, ideology, ideas in general fall in line, I guess, with, we'll say, environmentalists, okay, is that now I think a lot of people, and I get it, like, look, I understand where Star Trek and science fiction's role, or, what role that's played in this. A lot of people think, a lot of people like the idea of going to outer space. A lot of people like the idea of colonizing other worlds and so on. There's an argument to be had around colonizing other worlds, and what right do you have to do that? I'm going to save that for, that's something you'd have to ask me on. That's something for another time, and I don't think any one person really has a great answer for that, because it's a huge philosophical question, an ethical question. But as far as, colonizing other worlds, look, I know I am not in the majority on this. I don't think there's that many worlds that humans could even begin to try and live like they do on the planet Earth. Okay, like in Star Trek, they call them Class M planets, right? Which means suitable for human life. I don't think I don't think there's that many out there to even bother with. I think the Earth is a genuine, rare jewel in the entire universe, especially when you just consider the mathematics for all this to become a thing. In fact, there was a story in Forbes. This is beautiful. I had it lined up, I know, for an episode of Sovereign Tech. I don't know if I'll get to it, but there was a new planet that people were talking about. Turns out, here's the funny thing, right? I forget the name of the planet. I'd have to look it up quick, but it's a very recent story. We're going to be talking about celestial bodies in the second question here. But there's a new planet recently discovered. Now, the big news about this new planet is that, it's in the Goldilocks zone, okay, around the star that it happens to be around. So it's one of these exoplanets, which is what they title planets that are considered to be similar to Earth, and that potentially in the future we could, colonize or inhabit or go to, okay? Like there was the TRAPPIST star system and all this stuff. Many, many over the years, we talked about them pretty much every time they're discovered, because I have the same point to make every time it happens. Now, here's the interesting thing with this new planet that was just discovered in the past couple weeks, or just announced anyway. And that is, this is the first one where they know for a fact that it has water. It's the very first one. I know what you're saying. You're like, wait a minute, but they said this one in the TRAPPIST star system had water and that this one had... No. The curtain that I have been lifting for years is finally getting lifted by some other people. Basically, you finally have journalists and scientists and a lot of armchair scientists coming out and saying, wait a minute, we actually don't have the technology to know whether or not any of these exoplanets are really Earth-like in the first place. They just kind of fit certain bills, and so it's sort of what we're talking about. But we really don't have the technology to know if any of these planets are habitable at all by us, and we're guessing. that they're Earth-like in any way. We're guessing. And that's what I've been telling you for years. Every time they do these big announcements are pure marketing, and it's just to, I don't know, make people feel like NASA is doing something or whatever. Whatever the fuck it's about. It's there's money somewhere, otherwise they wouldn't waste their time. Every time they announce these planets, it's pretty much bullshit. But I'm really glad that finally someone, I guess Forbes was having a weak month with numbers, and so they let somebody A, say something truthful, and B, it just happened to be a great hot take for them to have, is that for them to finally come out and say, hey, actually, we don't really have the technology to know if any of these planets are Earth-like. We really don't know. Thank you. Because that's the point I've brought up all this time, is that there's a list that, like, the International Planetary Society or Alliance, is it IPA or IPS? I forget. Anyway, that organization, like, they keep, and there's a bunch of them. NASA does it too, where they keep track of all these potential exoplanets. But they take off just as many as they add every year, because then they realize, oh shit, actually, we don't think this one's as Earth-like as we originally thought. It's what, when there was the big announcement around the TRAPPIST star system, it was bullshit. It was pure bullshit. And I said it was bullshit. We did a whole segment about it on Sovereign Tech. My point in saying all this is I think the Earth is exceptionally rare. And if there's a how dare you moment, it's fucking how dare you count on the idea that, we can just go to another planet, or we can just go here or there or whatever, and think that you can take chances with the planet, with the home in this universe that we have. Fuck you. And that's maybe the biggest area where I sit in with a lot of these people, is that to roll the fucking dice with this planet, bullshit. Don't you? This is, look, going to outer space, going to other planets and all this. I've talked about this briefly on episodes of Sovereign Tech. Look, we can do that right now. We have it. It sounds like $6 million man. We have the technology. It was called Project Orion, not the NASA Project Orion. This was a different Project Orion that Freeman Dyson was involved with back in the 60s. They developed a working atomic-powered spaceship that could carry the survivors of humanity or humanity off to another planet. It could pull it off, especially within the solar system. And then we could kind of, you could argue you could jump from there. Here's the reason why we're not doing it. The reason we're not doing it is because to launch the fucking thing, you're going to kill probably hundreds of thousands of people on this planet, and who the fuck knows what you're going to do to the planet itself. This is long before there was environmentalism or climate science or whatever fucking buzzwords are going around right now. These were scientists who said, look, yeah, we did this. We're able to go travel the stars. We're able to take a bunch of people to another planet right now at a good clip, at a good speed. But we're going to end up killing a lot of people, and we might even wreck the Earth if we do it, so we can't do it. It's fact. Kudos to them for having the fucking... And I understand where they're coming from, right? Because a lot of those scientists that worked on the Orion project were the same scientists that, worked on the A-bomb. And they realized what their science had become and what it ended up getting used for. And so they wanted to make up for that. But they also, and part of that was creating something, very peaceful, something that would ensure the survival of humanity and not its destruction like a nuclear weapon, but instead its survival like a nuclear spaceship. But then they realized that, oh shit, who knows what damage we do just launching this fucking thing. Or, strip mining the planet, strip mining the Earth just to build it. So kudos to them. And again, all of that stopped and put to a halt, and I don't think it was because of funding. All of that, there's a great book about it that you can read I think it's actually by Freeman Dyson's son. All of that, just because they recognize this could be more harm than good. But admittedly, it's comforting to know that the Orion project is out there and the plans are out there, because if something horrible did happen to the Earth, we do have an escape plan, but that's all it is right now, is an escape plan. But tell you what, how about we how about we don't have to use the escape hatch, right? We don't have to use the escape pod. Let's just take care of the fucking spaceship Earth that we have right now. So yeah, I don't like rolling the dice with this planet. And biodiversity is really important. I mean, again, this is a very big conversation. But I have what I really want to respond with about Greta Thunberg and my real thoughts on it. I mean, I think I gave you my thoughts on, I don't know, I don't agree with a lot of, she lays out a bunch of stats and everything and all that stuff. I mean, the math on that is sometimes it's far worse than what they're saying. Sometimes some of that math has just ended up not becoming true. Regardless, I think the powers that be, okay, politicians, corporations, the powers that be, the money masters, whatever you want to call them, pick your term on that one. I do think that they have a very real problem. The very real problem that they have is that they have come up with all of these what are seen as liberal agendas. They have come up with all of these things, supported the fuck out of them, taught them in schools and wherever else. Now you have a young generation that believes all this stuff. And some of it, there's accuracy to it, but when it gets twisted and used to just give, governments and corporations more money and more power, that's fucked up. Okay. But regardless, is that there are these these liberal, quote unquote, if you want to believe in this sort of thing, there are these liberal agendas out there that have been pushed out there. You can look at Silicon Valley, okay, where there are so many things, you have the government, arguing, and just pick your libertarian conspiracy. Oh, the government's just pushing healthcare because they want to be, have central power and they want a world government and, they're all a bunch of socialists and blah, blah, blah and everything. Look, whatever libertarian conspiracy you want to pick out for why, these varying liberal programs exist. Okay. You have people that genuinely believe this sort of shit. And here's the thing is that I do think to some degree, I mean, again, some of these liberal agendas are very real issues. Granted, government is not the solution to any of these and never is. Okay. But here's what I think is happening is that they are creating, okay. How well this actually works on people is a whole other story, but whatever. At the very least, there certainly are people who seem to be picketing and, you have Black Lives Matter, you have a lot of these different organizations and movements that occur and all, out of all this. Okay. And the government seems to, or at least like maybe the Democrats or whoever seem to support all this stuff. Here's the thing, like they've created a lot of these and funded and supported a lot of these movements, but their purpose in doing so is to just entrench further their own oligarchical power. Okay. In Washington, in Silicon Valley, in wherever, authoritarianism comes out of. The problem is that they've created people who have such strong convictions out of what they've taught. And again, look, some of these issues are very legit. Even if, like, they were getting pushed for the wrong reasons, i.e. for more government power. But I think what's happening is that they've created people who just believe in this shit so much, rightly or wrongly, that it's coming back to bite them in the ass, because now these people, these kids, like a Greta Thunberg or whoever else, yeah, some of them might end up getting twisted and used for, by the government as like, figureheads or maybe even puppets. But a lot of them, I mean, like the shit that's going on in Silicon Valley where, and it's funny, it's so sad because libertarians are like, oh, what happened to the anti-war left? Oh, it's still out there. In fact, they're walking out, leaving their companies or doing some kind of internal action. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of programmers in Silicon Valley who are purposely fucking with military programs and military contracts that Microsoft has, that Google has, Amazon has, pick your tech giant. I mean, they're not going to stand for it. You know, I mean, this is the thing. Like I get it. You know, well, when Obama was in power, then, you know, if he bombed people, the left was okay with it. But if it was Bush, then, you know, then it wasn't okay. Now, here's the thing. That seesaw act, it's working on some people, but on a lot of people are clearly very, very intelligent. It's not working anymore. And they are now holding these powers that were trying to seesaw them ideologically and philosophically. They're now holding them accountable. And you're ending up with maybe Greta Thunberg's. I don't know her that well. I can't speak to that, but I can definitely say in Silicon Valley, I know that there are people who, you know, full on, you know, Democrat, stem to stern, you know, they're your lefties, liberals and all that. And they are not okay with what Silicon Valley is doing. They are not okay with any war drums. I mean, I think this year alone in 2019, I think there have been multiple attempts again, and this has been going on for at least over a decade. I think there have been multiple occasions where attempts have been made to go to war with Iran, where like stories have been come up with. I mean, this ship's been attacked. I mean, it's all classic Gulf of Tonkin kind of stuff. And this is one area where Twitter, like, I mean, it seemed abundantly clear. Oh, no. This is false flag horseshit. And I don't think that's just because Trump is in power. People are not, I mean, it's kind of comforting. Unfortunately, they all still believe in government and they still want government solutions, but they are not falling for this crap anymore. So I think the government has, I mean, they've seesawed too much. And corporations have seesawed too much, and people are wise to it now. You've taught them since they were kids in the 90s or whatever. You've taught them that, oh, we got to protect the environment. Oh, you know, we got to be anti-war. You know, violence doesn't solve anything. You know, you've taught them all this stuff. And now they're seeing, wait a minute, the government doesn't play by those rules. The government is, you know, do as I say, not as I do. And companies are do as I say and not as I do. And they're wise to it, and they're not putting up with it anymore. So that's my thoughts on this, is that, yeah, you end up with these people who are, you know, 16-year-olds or whoever else who are fucking marching shit and, you know, telling to the future, you know, what the fuck's wrong with you adults? You're telling us we have these problems, but you're not doing jack shit. And I think that's just going to get worse. I'm not saying that we're going to end up with some kind of libertarian paradise or some anarchist paradise because of it. But, you know, you ironically, and I'm sure like Cory Doctorow would love this, ironically, in a surveillance society, that surveillance really is going both ways. Whether the powers that be like it or not. And people are getting held accountable for this shit. And that's why I think also that they're doubling down on algorithms. I mean, Twitter just released a feature where you can block responses from specific threads. I mean, that's totally to control free speech. Like that's totally to because you can't just keep banning people, because now people are getting sick of that, because it's not just righties, you know, or conservatives getting banned. Now you have lefties getting banned as well. I mean, it's just, they are absolutely losing control. But understand, don't think for a second, because here's where I think a lot of people also get tripped up. Is they think, well, see, this is it. More information, better communication. People are starting to realize the truth. Yeah, but don't give Silicon Valley the credit for that, because they're trying just as hard with new algorithms, new feature sets and social media and whatever else. They're trying just as hard to keep the truth and troublemakers and rabble rousers and whatever else from, you know, getting out there and from getting the word out there, or from allowing you to comment on a story that, say, Huffington Post puts out there, or that The Guardian puts out there, and yet you lay down some hard truth in a tweet response. Well, now they can block that. Okay. Or you want to show a picture of like this terrible double tap that happened in, you know, an Arabic country or something like that. Well, Facebook's algorithm now can instantly detect when you shared a picture like that, and they can get rid of it and block it. Silicon Valley is as much a system of control. Do not credit them as somehow allowing for this to happen. If any truth is getting out there, it is a byproduct and nothing more. But, again, I mean, they do have to, the powers that be, again, it's corporatism. They're in trouble because the narratives that they have been selling for at least the past 20, 30 years, there are people now who have those deeply ingrained, and when the powers that be act outside of it, they're not putting up with it anymore. So, I can't say a whole lot about Greta Thunberg. I do appreciate having somebody up there, having a 16-year-old gal up there yelling, "How dare you?" And ultimately what she's saying is that, I want a planet to live on when I get older. And don't we all have that? I mean, if you want to argue, if you want to complain about all her statistics and everything, that's a whole other ballgame. But yeah, I mean, I did kind of enjoy that. Is she going to end up like Malala, where she gets, used by governments to put out varying government messages or varying messages from lobbying parties? Yeah, probably. I'm not an idiot. I'm not that naive to think, anything different. Because if she was, really, anytime somebody really speaks truth to power, it's not allowed. Like, I mean, you're not going to get the kind of coverage that she's gotten, even semi-organically as it seems to be on Twitter. It's just not going to happen. It can't. So, anyway, let's, do I want to get into this next question here? Yeah, what the fuck? Let me see if I can do this one quick. Here we go. Savzu, I saw your tweet about C2019 Q4 entering our solar system, speaking of Twitter, and thought it was hilarious telling it to stay away. Okay, real quick. This is announced about a week ago, maybe, that we have for the second time in the history that we are aware of, that we've recorded in modern times. The second time we've had a interstellar body come through our solar system. This one being they're still trying to figure out what exactly it is. It's not as interesting as the last the last celestial body that brought its way through, but we'll get to that. So anyway, and I basically said, it was like, oh, greetings from Earth, C2019 Q4, but stay away, far away. There's nothing good here. So I guess that's what they found hilarious. Anyway, but was that you admitting there's alien life out there, man? Seriously though, no, it's not. Seriously though, my real question is, what do you think? How did they pronounce this? Oumuamua? I think it's Oumuamua. It's a Hawaiian word. I know that. Because that's it was one of the observatories in Hawaii that found it. What do you think Oumuamua was? Alien ship? World is hollow and I have touched the sky kind of shit? Thanks for the everlasting entertainment. Oh, how kind. Anyway, thank you. So, okay. Oumuamua was it was another interstellar traveler. Okay. It basically, what we deduced, what, astronomers deduced, is that it was a cigar-shaped rock coming through our solar system. Now, there was a lot of talk about Oumuamua. A lot of people saying, hey, is this like a ship? Is this... And for those that don't know, this person obviously knows me and knows I would get the reference. World is hollow and I've touched the sky kind of shit. The World is hollow and I've touched the sky is a season 3 episode of the original series of Star Trek, in which there is a an alien species that is hurtling through space because their original home planet, and they don't know this, the people that are on the ship don't realize it. They're hurtling through space because their original home planet was destroyed and they're on their way to another one, but they're actually flying through space on the interior of an asteroid. Like, the species 10,000 years previous built a starship out of an asteroid and launched it, towards this other planet that the people will then inhabit when the asteroid gets there. Okay, it's an interesting episode to say the least. So was Oumuamua actually like a starship disguised as a cigar-shaped, asteroid? or cigar-shaped, I mean, it wasn't really a comet, but a cigar-shaped body, rock, coming through. So, I mean, I guess that's where the question about alien ship comes from. So, Oumuamua, I mean, any guess, frankly, it's anybody's guess. I mean, it just is. It's interesting, like, in fact, you mentioned the world is hollow and I've touched the sky. In that, the crew of the Enterprise has to redirect this asteroid ship because something on it failed and it ended up going off course. I mean, it's a fascinating theory, right? That Oumuamua may have been an asteroid that was just a little off course, and it was supposed to, say, land on Earth. And it didn't happen. Or hell, maybe even Mars. Or here's another story I know I had lined up to talk about on Sovereign Tech, which is now scientists are saying, actually, not that long ago, Venus could have had life on it, much like Earth, which I have already talked about that for years on Sovereign Tech, but we'll save that story for another time. So, maybe they were heading for Venus, who knows? I mean, my answer is I don't know. It is interesting that, I mean, just to add a little something to it, a cigar-shaped object. Now, to understand about UFOs, okay, were we talking about UFOs earlier? Yeah. No. Sorry, that was a conversation Ellen and I were having. That was not something I was having with you on the air. Anyway, UFOs a lot of people think that they are a more modern phenomenon, right? Like that they've only been happening since World War II for a lot of people, right? Like Battle of Los Angeles and so on. UFO sightings actually have occurred for, at the very least, hundreds of years. There are famous ones out of Europe and there are multiple ones of these, where cigar-shaped vessels would appear over the sky in Germany, other places. It's interesting that it's a cigar-shaped vessel, right? I mean, it makes you think of, like, in Star Trek 4, right? The Voyage Home, where there's that probe that's looking for, speaking of environmentalist stuff, that's looking for humpback whales, but they're extinct, right, in the 23rd century. And so it starts destroying the Earth. But like a cigar-shaped vessel comes through. And, I mean, I think a lot of people thought as soon as they saw, got an idea of what Oumuamua was supposed to look like, I think some people were thinking of like that probe in Star Trek 4. Yeah, so the fact that it's cigar-shaped, is interesting because we do have a history of things in our sky that were cigar-shaped. And again, we're talking about 15th, 16th, 17th century Europe, where there's no real reason to bullshit. Now you can't believe any of these stupid fucking UFO reports. They're crap. But these are things recorded on, what did they call them? Broadsheets or woodcuts, where it was the newspaper of the day. And again, I mean, one of the biggest things you have to grasp is that you couldn't bullshit around back then because you either saw it, and a lot of people did see these things. You either saw them, and you had to have a lot of people that corroborated what you saw. Otherwise, the Spanish Inquisition was, and nobody expects that. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, was going to come and get you. Or the church was going to off your head, or the church would, wipe out whatever company was putting out the woodcuts or the broadsheets. I mean, it wasn't going to happen. I think it's woodcuts. Anyway. So, these are people who really had to be pretty accurate in what the fuck they saw. You were not going to pussyfoot around. I mean, there was the case where in Christopher Columbus's logbooks that he saw lights coming out of the water, right, when he was coming to America, and there was a claim that or the Inquisition at the time was saying, wait, did you saying to him, I mean, they took him to court, or they took him to trial, I should say, over this, and they were going to off him for suggesting that he saw a menorah. I mean, this is the thing, you had to be really, really careful what the fuck you said back then. So I don't think people were bullshitting when they saw cigar-shaped. I mean, I don't know what the fuck those were. I could speculate. I don't think they were aliens, but I could speculate about it. But it is interesting that, yeah, we have a cigar-shaped thing coming through with, Oumuamua, and we have a history of seeing cigar-shaped objects, in the Earth's sky, or in space or whatever. Well, where's the sky in space? You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. Do I think it was alien life? No, I don't. I really don't. I mean, if I were just to give you like how do I go through day to day thinking about Oumuamua, I treat it as one of those mysteries, but in general, I just treat it as, well, that's a very interesting shaped rock that came through our solar system. So that's my thoughts there. I could get fanciful if I wanted, but I mean, if it was some kind of starship, I bet it is something that's failed and there's probably nothing even alive left on it. Who knows? I mean, there are as far as that idea, there are far more interesting places to look. And you don't have to look at things that have swooped into our solar system. You can look at things that are right in our solar system. Like what happened to Phobos 1 and 2, the Russian probes from the 80s. That went to to Mars and looked at the moon Phobos. I mean those are much more interesting questions and interesting things to look into. So anyway, that's what I've got. I hope you found that in any way remotely interesting. Now let's get into our album of the week. We'll wrap this baby up. I can't believe that this is a thing. I absolutely cannot believe that this is the thing. Lee Aaron, who I am a big fan of Lee Aaron. Lee Aaron is a Canadian singer. She's from the 80s, from the 1980s. She was a metal singer, even though later on in her career, in the 90s and so on, she would try out some different stuff, jazz and whatever else. She never really made it big in America. If anybody knows, there might be a couple songs people would know by her. Metal Queen was kind of her first big hit. Sex with Love was a major hit, in 91, I think. I think I've talked about her in the past on this show, or even on a Q&A. Female metal singers at the time were very rare. She was one that, more so than even Lita Ford or, Vixen or, go down the list, she really embraced the corny, barbarian, warrior metal style, kind of like Manowar, or even some of the wilder stuff that maybe Iron Maiden would do or whatever. But she just totally dove into that. And she dove into the sexuality, the rampant sex and a lot of this other stuff, that was kind of a part of the metal scene that that Congress in the U.S. would call, what did they call it? Porn rock? Is that what Tipper Gore called it? She just dove, right in on it. And I love it to death. It's cheesy as fuck, but I think it's great. So she never made it big in America. She never really made it big. I mean, she was big in Canada. I don't think she even made it big in Japan. There's some Canadian acts, I think Harem Scarum, and some others that would end up becoming huge in Japan as well as in Canada. They'd still have big followings, but would just never do it anywhere else. I don't think Lee Aaron ever really escaped Canada. Not with anything that's worth writing home about. And I say that with no disrespect. It just didn't happen. Just like Kane Roberts, who was American, should have been a huge deal, and for whatever reason wasn't. But he's still one of my favorite artists of all time. And amazingly, he came out with an album in 2019, and it has been almost 20 years since he had last come out with one. But Lee Aaron, so this is her first time in probably 15 years or so, where she has come out with an album. Now, sadly, because as much as I would want it, it's not a new album, but it is a live album. And it's called Power Soul Rock and Roll Live in Germany. And it is from 2019. This is a new recording. She stepped out of the metal scene for a while. I'm glad that she's back in it because I think her music's so fun and so cool and frankly, very sexy. Anyway, I won't go there. But I love this. And, you forget live albums, as much as a lot of them are bullshit, live albums used to be a really big deal, especially when music used to cost a lot, I remember when I was growing up, a CD could cost you 20 some odd bucks. Hell, it could cost double that. And a live album, especially when bands didn't have a greatest hits yet or something like that, a live album was always a great way to really get a greatest hits. And some live albums, I think, have versions of songs that are better than the actual album versions. For example, Kiss Alive 3, which I know is heavily produced and not as live as we want, has, in my opinion, two of the best versions of, especially because of Paul Stanley's banter, but the best version of Take It Off from Revenge. It has the best version of I Was Made for Loving You off of Dynasty. So live albums, I think, are really important when they're done right. And I think this album, I've listened to this over and over again multiple times already. I think this live album is fantastic. And it does give a great overview of her career, because her CDs are not easy to get your hands on. But this is easy to get your hands on. And you can't get everything on streaming from her either. I mean, you really can't, because she's kind of one of those rarer artists. So I think this is a really, really powerful and fun and energetic live album. She does do her big stuff. She does Sex with Love. Some Girls Do. I love that song. Metal Queen. I mean, and it's great. I mean, like, so I'm a huge fan. I know this will probably, some people will be like, what the fuck? I'm a huge fan of Rick Springfield. Fuck Jesse's Girl. His live album was what really got me into him. Alive, which I think came out in like 2001. I saw it. They were advertising it when I went to like Universal Studios in that year. And I was like, oh, what's that? That looks amazing. And like I heard, because at Universal Studios, because, Universal Music, they were playing some of the music as you walked in, and they were playing Affair of the Heart, right? And like the opening riff on that was so intense. And I'm like, what the fuck is that? And so I had to go out and buy the album. And eventually I bought the album, the live album, and it was so energetic and so awesome. And with Rick Springfield, he plays harder live than he does on his, because otherwise his albums can sometimes be pretty poppy, a lot of pop. But he jams hard or harder anyway. I mean, he's not like, he's not Opeth or something, but he jams harder when he's live. And so the live album is far better than any performance on any of his actual albums. So I think we do ourselves a disservice when we ignore live albums. Sometimes they're worth ignoring. Sometimes it's pretty clear they're a cash grab. But other times, I think that they're really worthwhile. And this one from Lee Aaron, Power, Soul, and Rock and Roll, I think is one of those ones that's really worthwhile. So do check it out and find it if you can. Anyway, that's it for your Wednesday Q&A. Got into some controversial shit, but whatever. If you have questions on it, again, don't drop being a patron. Don't drop being a member of the Underground. Talk to me. Ask me the questions. And, if I can expound on it, I will. And if I'm wrong, I'll admit it when I'm wrong. I've done it before on this, on varying episodes of Sovereign Tech over the years. So just, bring it on. If you want to, I want to have the conversation with you. Speaking of having a conversation, we do have the live show coming up fast. I have yet to secure an exact date, but I will be announcing that on Twitter. And of course, if you use the Podbean app, you will get notified when it does go live. So we do have a live show coming up later this month, and that'll be a lot of fun. So anyway, that's it for this episode. I will see all of you on the other side.